Imagine trudging up a rain-slicked mountain road in the dark, lantern hissing, boots filling with mud and regret, while the wind slaps your cloak like an unpaid tax collector. You've been told, by a half-drunk trader who wouldn't shut up about treasures beyond gold, that an obscure monastery clings to these cliffs. The place is famous for hymns nobody hums anymore, and cheese that smells like a confession you forgot to make. But that's not why you're here. You're here because rumor says the monks behind those granite walls hide books, dangerous books, behind panels that look like nothing more than centuries of grit and candle soot. Books that should have been burned by pious hands or buried in dank soil, but somehow slipped through the fingers of kings, inquisitors, and the occasional over-eager mouse. Tonight, you want to see one, maybe even touch a page, before dawn scatters courage the way crows scatter crumbs. First obstacle, the gate. It's double-barred oak, black with age, big enough to keep out Vikings, pilgrims, and the sort of scholars who won't stop arguing about Latin declensions. You bang the iron knocker anyway, once, twice. Thunder answers, echoing deep in the cloister. When the slot finally slides open, you're met with eyes the color of old vellum. Brother Theodoric. Rumor also said he hasn't left the monastery in 22 years. He opens the door just far enough for an uncompromising beard to check the weather. You mutter some excuse, storm, lost, sanctuary, and flash the wax-sealed letter you bribed a notary to forge. It claims you're here to verify a psalter for an archbishop. Technically true if by verify you mean sniff around until you practically inhale dust looking for forbidden ink. The door creaks wider. The monastery's interior is colder than the night. Stone corridors twist like a serpent that grew old and forgot where its own tail ended. Candles sputter. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls Compline. Time for prayer, time for silence. Brother Theodoric guides you to a guest cell, barely large enough for a cot, a pitcher of water, and a wooden cross nailed slightly crooked on the wall. He says you'll meet the librarian at matins, then slips away with the hush of well-practiced secrecy. You stare at the cross. Even it seems to ask, "Are you sure?" Sleep dodges your grasp. The walls of the cell radiate the stories they've overheard. Muttered penances, muffled weeping, snores thick enough to mortar bricks. You picture what might lie 2-3 passageways to the east, chambers where monks copy scripture under strict supervision. But what about the other chamber, the one not on any plan, the one the abbot swore never existed, the one with a difference you can only spot if you count flagstones or tap each panel till wood sings a hollow note? According to legend, that secret scriptorium contains volumes outlawed by emperors, popes, and emperors who thought they were popes. Heraclitus, banned for calling the cosmos an ever-living fire. A treatise on surgical techniques the church deemed too pagan. A translation of the Sibylline prophecies, annotated by some long-dead heretic who believed angels occasionally forget their lines. And, whispered most daringly of all, a codex said to reveal how a certain saint faked his own martyrdom by bribing the executioner with pickled eels. True? Probably not. But rumors don't need veracity when they already have claws. Matins arrives like a slap. Bells clang at an hour so rude even owls grumble. You shuffle to the chapel with the other guests, 2 merchants detouring from Antwerp, 1 French pilgrim who smells like onions and sin, and watch monks file in, hoods low, chanting Latin psalms in a key so minor it threatens to evaporate. The librarian appears after the final amen. Brother Marcus, thin as a quill, spectacles fogged by his own anxious breathing. He holds a lantern whose glass is stained with soot patterns that look suspiciously like letters if you squint. He offers you a tour of the main library after breakfast. The main library, of course, is not why you're here, but you nod like a grateful lamb. Breakfast is barley gruel that tastes like it lost a war. Over wooden bowls, you drop subtle inquiries about theological controversies. Have they any copies of Origen, perhaps an unredacted Aristotle? Brother Marcus nearly spills his spoon. He mumbles that certain works were misfiled long ago. He changes the subject to weather faster than you thought piety could sprint. Tour time. The main library sits beneath a vaulted ceiling painted with cherubs whose smiles seem carved by someone who'd never met a baby. Shelves tower, ladders creak. Scriptoria line the walls, desks cluttered with quills, inkhorns, half-rolled scrolls, parchment waiting like unborn maps. Brother Marcus shows off their prized possession, a bejeweled gospel bound in silver that weighs more than the prior. Pretty, but not forbidden. You feign admiration while eyeing the floor. 22 paces from the entrance, a patch of flagstones looks newer, grout thin, as if retouched. You drop your handkerchief, crouch, knock twice. Solid. A monk coughs behind you. You rise. Mid-afternoon, you slip away, claiming you need prayerful solitude. You retrace your steps to the suspect flagstones. Nobody watches, at least not visibly. You press an ear to the ground. Nothing but the heartbeat in your skull. Then you spot it. A candle sconce, 2 pillars down, tilts at an angle just odd enough. You grip, twist. Stone groans. A section of the wall disengages with a sigh like a patient exhale. Cold air wafts out, dry, papery, scented faintly of ink older than kingdoms. You step inside, heart punching ribs like it's trying to escape this plot. The hidden corridor is narrower than a coffin lid. Dust blankets everything, including a ladder leading down into blackness. At the bottom, another door, wood, iron-bound, etched with a faded inscription. Let truth burn bright behind shadows. You push. Hinges protest, but yield. Lantern up, you enter the clandestine library. Shelves sag under manuscripts bound in goat, deer, pig, sometimes something suspiciously leathery. Cobwebs lace the spines like forgotten marginalia. You draw a random volume, wipe grime. Physica Curiosa, an illustrated bestiary describing bats with human faces. Next, Adversus Mundum, anonymous, margins packed with notes in red that critique both Aristotle and Augustine with equal venom. You laugh, quiet. The books dislike loudness. Deeper you wander, reading titles that taste like forbidden honey. The lunar humors and their influence on melancholy. Dialogues with stone. The gospel according to Thomas's lost twin. On the manufacture of mirrors that remember faces. Some pages glint with gold leaf, others bleed mildew. None bear an imprimatur. All could earn a pyre. One shelf near the back has no dust. Recent footprints pock the floor. Someone else visits. You follow the prints to a reading desk. An open codex lies waiting, as if its reader fled mid-sentence. The script is Greek, hand elegant, margins crowded with notes in a sharper Latin hand. You decipher a phrase. For knowledge is a blade double-edged. One side severing ignorance, the other faith. Charming. You flip forward. diagrams of anatomical cross-sections, labeled in Arabic. Flip again. An experiment measuring blood flow using leeches and calibrated reed tubes. Medieval heresy meets proto-science. No wonder it's hidden. A sound. Footsteps from above. Someone entering the corridor. You smother the lantern. Darkness swallows you whole. You count heartbeats. 1, 50, 100. The footsteps grow louder. Pause at the ladder. A voice. Brother Marcus, whispering a prayer of protection. He descends, holding a candle. Light flickers across vaults of secrecy. He heads to the very desk where you crouch behind a stack of scrolls. He resumes reading the codex, lips moving. Occasionally he copies passages into a smaller notebook he pulls from his sleeve. The librarian steals knowledge from the secret library inside his own monastery. Delicious irony. But candles betray even the cautious. Wax drips, lands on the floor with a hiss. Marcus curses softly, sets his notebook down, rummages for a rag. Opportunity. You retreat backward between stacks, toward a second exit you hope exists. You find a slight draft, good sign. A panel disguised as a shelf of hymnals slides open to a staircase curling upward. You ascend. Halfway, you step on a loose stone. Snap. The echo ricochets like thunder. Marcus shouts. You bolt, bursting through another concealed door into, of all places, the abbot's private study. The abbot, a man built like a lectern but twice as stern, sits at a desk littered with correspondence. He looks up, quill frozen. For a moment, only parchment rustles. You weigh lies, truth, flight. Outside, bells announce vespers. Inside, silence
Finally,
sharpens.
you speak. You were searching for the latrine, got lost, stumbled through a trick panel. Terribly sorry. The abbot's stare could thaw iron. He gestures to a chair. You sit. He folds his hands, thumbs rubbing as if counting sins. Slowly he explains the monastery's burden. To guard texts too perilous for common minds, yet too priceless for oblivion. They test novices for discretion. They monitor scholars. Even Marcus is only partly trusted. He asks what you saw. You mention nothing specific, only the magnitude. He nods, almost sad. He says, since you found the library, you must understand one law. Knowledge here never leaves. You gulp. He means confinement, or worse. But then his gaze softens. He admits the world outside is changing. Printing presses churn, heresies circulate like fleas. Perhaps, he muses, guarded revelation is better than chained secrecy. He proposes a pact. You will catalog certain texts, redact the most volatile passages, prepare them for cautious release to select universities. In return, you may leave, eventually, with copies of safe material and the abbot's blessing. Refuse and, well, monks have creative ways of encouraging reflection. You agree. And so your days reshape. At dawn, you copy epics that predate Homer. At noon, you sip herbal broth while debating cosmology with Marcus, who reveals he once studied in Paris until a bishop branded him too curious. At night, you sneak back into the forbidden stacks, now with permission to glimpse wonders. A palimpsest containing a lost tragedy of Euripides, overwritten by sermons. A folio of jokes so bawdy even the margins blush. A horoscope calculated for the Antichrist's birthday. Each discovery rewires your understanding of what medieval meant. Less darkness, more hidden bulbs of brilliance ready to bloom if only someone dared trim the brambles. Yet unease lingers. Outside, armies march, inquisitors ride, libraries burn. How long can stone walls outlast fire and fanaticism? You start drafting contingency plans. Duplicate fragile codices, stash them in lead-lined boxes. Maybe smuggle microscrolls inside hollowed candles bound for Venice. Because you've realized something the monks already know. Every age has its bonfires, and parchment is patient, but not flame-proof. Weeks pass. You almost forget the world smells of anything but wax and dust. Then a courier arrives, bearing a red-sealed decree from the Archbishop himself, announcing an impending visitation to ensure orthodox compliance. Translation: an inquisitorial sweep. Panic trembles through the cloister like a plucked lute string. The abbot convenes an emergency chapter. Brothers argue, hide the books deeper, burn them to save lives. Replace covers with psalters and hope inspectors can't read Greek. Eyes turn to you, the outsider turned curator. Your idea? Build a false wall in the main library's north alcove. Move the most damning texts there. Plaster over, paint to match. Let the stupidly obvious passageway you first found act as a decoy. If inquisitors discover it, they'll think they've uncovered the big secret, confiscate a few mildly seditious volumes, feel victorious, and leave before noticing the bigger lie inches away. Risky? Absolutely. But monks are gamblers when salvation's at stake. They work through the night. Hammers muted under cloth, plaster mixed with prayers. By dawn, a seamless wall greets bleary eyes. Behind it, shelves cradle the true contraband, wrapped in linen, spritzed with oil of thyme to fend off mold. In front, the fake secret door gapes invitingly, stocked with texts heretical enough to satisfy any zealot, but harmless enough to spare heads. Brother Marcus weeps. He's had to surrender a beloved commentary on Ecclesiastes that claims the author was drunk for half of chapter 3. Sacrifices must be made. The day of inspection arrives draped in thunderclouds. 5 men ride in, robes blacker than pilgrim rumors, crosses silver and sharp. They question, prod, demand ledgers. They sniff the air like wolves. Eventually, one knocks on flagstones with a cane, hollow echo. They pry up the decoy panel. They gasp at the sight of suspicious Greek. They seize volumes, tuck them in burlap, declare the monastery culpable but not damned. A fine will be levied, copies surrendered, future oversight assured. They never notice the paint still drying on the wall 3 feet to the right. That night, the monks pray a litany of relief. You, however, can't shake the image of that hidden stack, safe for now, doomed later. You resolve to preserve at least a fraction beyond stone and secrecy. Ink to paper, paper to press, press to people. Let truth breathe. You begin compiling an index. Titles, subjects, dangers. It will take months, possibly years. But as you dip quill into ink, you recall the first time you heard rumor of forbidden books, and realize rumor is just history scratching at its coffin lid, begging to be let out. You intend to oblige. Imagine dawn leaking through stained glass windows the color of bruised plums, while you sit hunched over a desk the monks dragged into a forgotten transept and dubbed your office. Your quill scratches like a restless beetle across parchment, cataloging manuscript after manuscript before sleep can bargain for your eyelids.
3 weeks have slipped by since the Inquisitors trotted off feeling righteous, and in that short, sleepless eternity, you've inhaled more dust than air and tasted enough lamp oil smoke to season 1,000 fish. Yet every page you turn brims with the kind of ideas that crack complacency like thunder splits oak. Ideas about stars made of molten crystal, about plants that sing underground hymns, about the soul migrating the way geese do, never quite landing in the same country twice. They make you dizzy with possibility, like someone poured sunrise straight down your spine. Brother Marcus shuffles in, carrying 2 steaming mugs of chicory brew that tries and fails to impersonate coffee. His hair looks exactly how the manuscript illumination of Elijah's fiery ascent looks, wild, scorched, defiant. Without preamble, he drops a tiny scroll on the desk. "Found this tucked inside a hymnal about dragon-slaying saints," he whispers. You unroll the scrap carefully. The Greek is cramped but unmistakable. Fragments of Sappho, verses everyone swore were lost when the Alexandrian warehouse caught fire. Lines bloom across the parchment. Desire compared to a moth circling a cold lamp. Melody described as milk spilled on night. Marcus waits for your verdict the way gamblers wait for dice to settle. You decide on honesty. "We need it transcribed in triplicate," you murmur, then buried in fault lines of scholarship so deep no censor's shovel can reach it. Marcus sighs relief, as if he'd feared you might feed the scroll to goats for safety. The abbot appears later, robes swishing like cautious waves, to ask how the indexing progresses. You show him neat columns, title, language, heresy quotient, recommended concealment. He nods, lips twitching at entries such as Manual for Communing with Comets, highly inflammable, hide behind the statue of St. Boringus, or A Treatise on Moderate Gluttony, borderline sinful, perfect for distracting auditors. He signs off on your strategy of layered secrecy, public library, decoy secret room, ultra-secret vault, and, newly added, portable cache disguised as liturgical scrolls destined for sympathetic universities. He utters the word diaspora like it weighs a ton. Saving knowledge, he admits, means scattering pieces of it across Europe like breadcrumbs no tyrant can sweep in a single rage. Night again. But the monastery never truly sleeps. In the refectory, candles flicker against archways, while lay brothers rehearse Gregorian chants, their harmonies weaving into your bloodstream until your pulse syncs with their minor thirds. You slip away to the hidden vault. The freshly plastered wall still smells of lime. Your fingers find the disguised latch, a wooden boss carved in the shape of Jonah's unimpressed whale. Inside, the vault glows gold where beeswax stubs fight darkness. You pass shelves until you find tonight's quarry, a codex bound in blue calfskin, rumored to be the Book of Inverted Saints. Opening it feels like prying open a confession sealed by thunder. Each chapter reverses the life of a biblical figure. Job praising misfortune, Jonah chasing leviathans for sport, Mary Magdalene lecturing apostles on the virtue of doubt. In the margins, some previous reader has scribbled debates with the text, arguing whether holiness demands obedience or beautiful disobedience. The dialogue stretches across centuries like a spider silk telephone line. As you copy passages deemed safe for the outside world, you notice water spots on a folio. Recent, not ancient. Someone else has been here. Someone reckless enough to read without blotting teardrops or condensation. You smell the parchment. Faint note of rosemary and sweat. Marcus? No, he drinks aniseed tea. The abbot? He smells of frankincense and sternness. A new ghost haunts these stacks.
The next morning, a storm barges over the mountain, hurling sleet sideways. No outsiders could arrive in that mess, which means your phantom reader is already cloistered within. During sext, you scan hoods, novices, old scribes, a visiting herbalist from Bologna cataloging medicinal lichens. He hums non-stop, but his fingers, ink-stained and restless, match the water-spot scribbler. You corner him later in the infirmary while he's grinding dried foxglove. He flinches when you mention the Book of Inverted Saints. His Latin accent slips into Italian panic. Confession spills. His name is Giulio. He was hired by a Florentine banker desperate for secret doctrines to blackmail rival bishops. Giulio planned to photograph pages using a portable camera obscura hidden inside his reliquary box, until he realized the text fascinated him beyond profit. Now he wants to stay, learn, maybe repent. You believe half of that.
You report to the abbot. He listens, fingers steepled. Finally, he decides on leniency with a leash. Giulio may remain as apprentice healer under Marcus's supervision and must aid your preservation efforts. Trust through forced labor. Medieval management at its finest. Giulio accepts, perhaps grateful he still owns a throat.
Weeks roll into a rhythm of cataloging, copying, debating, hiding. You discover a Syriac commentary proposing the universe is shaped like an almond submerged in honey. You stumble on an Arabic treatise correlating lunar eclipses with outbreaks of poetry. You laugh until tears ruin a 15th century map depicting Eden just east of Prague. Marcus scolds you for dampening priceless ink. You scold him for caring more about ink than absurdity. Friendship apparently means arguing which sins merit footnotes. Then, disaster in miniature. A candle topples in the decoy chamber. A stack of acceptable heresies ignites. Smoke slithers under doors. Bells ring. Novices sprint with buckets. The blaze is doused before masonry blackens, but the smell draws villagers who spot smoke through the cloister windows. Rumors ignite. Heretics brewing devil fires. Soon, letters from nearby barons demand investigation. The abbot's beard seems to gray by the hour. He suggests moving the entire hidden collection to catacombs beneath the cemetery, deeper, colder, harder to burn. You argue that moisture there will breed mold. Giulio proposes a rotating cache. Every full moon, shift a portion to a different hiding place, creating confusion even for insiders. It's insane, but brilliant. The abbot consents, so long as every move is recorded in a cipher only 3 of you understand. The cipher you design uses musical notation combined with zodiac symbols. A line of chant might secretly indicate shelf 4, row 6, wrapped in oilcloth. Marcus composes new hymns to encode future relocations. The choir practices them, oblivious that each melisma is basically a smuggling manifest sung to the heavens. You wonder if angels, fluent in all tongues, will get the joke. One crisp evening, while transferring volumes to a crypt niche behind the bones of Saint Malodorus, patron of failed perfumes, you hear distant hooves. Lanterns bob beyond the gatehouse. More visitors? The porter identifies them as scholars from Paris seeking copies of Avicenna. Perfect cover for spies or thieves. The abbot invites them in. Hospitality is a monastic rule after all, yet posts double watch. You, Marcus and Giulio, hide the most volatile books beneath a marble slab that once served as an altar top. You whisper a prayer to every god you've read about tonight. The Christian Trinity, Athena of good counsel, a Sumerian deity who supervises clay tablets, even a pagan goddess of bookmark ribbons. can't hurt. The newcomers, 3 academics and a squire, prove erudite, charming, and very curious about architectural oddities. They compliment the cloister arches, measure corridor angles, ask why certain walls are thicker than others. One night, you catch the squire tapping stones with a dagger, listening for cavities. You confront him. He claims to be mapping acoustic properties. You answer by confiscating the dagger. He doesn't protest, too polite or too guilty.
Giulio suggests administering a tincture of valerian at supper to induce drowsy candor. Marcus vetoes drugging guests. Instead, you orchestrate a debate on scholastic metaphysics guaranteed to bore anyone without extreme patience. You and Marcus argue Cartesian impossibilities, centuries premature, but they won't know, until the squire excuses himself, yawning. You tail him to the guest wing, where he produces a folded parchment from his boot, blueprint sketches of the monastery. He tucks them under a mattress. You consider stealing them, but instead swap them for doctored plans that divert attention toward the latrines. No books there, just smells capable of exorcism. By week's end, the Parisians depart with genuine copies of Avicenna, you're not total monsters, plus a dozen forged fragments you fabricated describing how bathing cures envy. Let French theologians argue about that for a decade while your vault stays safe. Spring bursts through stained glass in sprays of lime and gold. With longer light, you accelerate transcription. You train 2 novices selected for steady hands and ambivalent faith. They swear oaths in front of both crucifix and blank parchment, your attempt at loyalty insurance. Meanwhile, Giulio perfects a distillation method that turns walnut husks into near-black ink ideal for clandestine marginalia. Invisible under candlelight, visible under dawn's first rays. You ink secret dedications in many volumes. To whoever finds this, remember, fires die, words don't. One afternoon, a porter arrives breathless. A baron's daughter, Lady Isolde, seeks refuge. She claims her father declared her possessed after she questioned why women are forbidden to read certain epistles. The abbot agrees to harbor her under vow of discretion. You're tasked with giving her idle tasks. She chooses to copy music, quickly revealing perfect pitch and sharper wit. She also notices patterns in Marcus's ciphered hymns within a day. You recruit her, though Marcus frets it expands the conspiracy. She retorts, knowledge is like soup, too thick unless shared. Marcus can't argue, he hates thick soup. As summer swells, you implement the diaspora phase. Package 1, fragments of a Phoenician sea log describing an island of glass, bound inside the cover of a mundane sermon shipped with pilgrims to Compostela. Package 2, pseudepigraphic letters from Lilith to Adam, slipped into a crate of medicinal herbs bound for Salerno's medical school. Each drop requires bribery, stealth, and hope. You realize you've become a reverse inquisitor, spreading heresy in the name of enlightenment. The irony tastes like sacramental wine laced with pepper, sinful yet invigorating. Autumn returns bearing omens. Ravens gather on the bell tower, croaking Morse code warnings. Travelers whisper of a new papal bull condemning monastic vaults of impious speculation. Giulio brings news that printing presses in Basel produce cheap pamphlets urging mobs to loot libraries for purification. The abbot calls an emergency fast. Monks pray, but prayer now feels like locking stable doors, while knowledge neighs in flames. You propose the nuclear option, move the most important volumes outside Christendom altogether, to Moorish Granada, where scholars might treat them as treasures, not threats. Marcus balks, the abbot wavers. Lady Isolde volunteers to escort at least a saddlebag's worth. Her fluency in Arabic is excellent cover. The plan solidifies. A disguised trade caravan will leave after Harvest Feast. You, Marcus, Julio, and Isolde each memorize separate sections of the cipher map. If even one of you survives capture, the books can be found again. The night before departure, you return alone to the vault for a final choose-your-children moment. You decide on 7 works: the Sappho fragments, a scroll of Babylonian star charts, the Gospel of the Laughing Christ, banned for depicting resurrection as an inside joke, that treatise on lunar humors, a manual on surgical anesthesia with opium and ice could save lives, a compilation of women's folk remedies credited to Grandmothers Anonymous, and, selfishly, the Book of Inverted Saints, which reminds you rebellion can be holy. You wrap them in oilcloth, then in rough wool labeled Candles, Tallow, Inferior. Smell should discourage customs officers. As dawn bruises the sky purple, the caravan lines the courtyard. Mules snorting, carts creaking, monks crying in slow motion. The abbot offers a benediction that sounds half blessing, half apology. You mount a mule named Reluctance. Marcus, staying behind, presses into your palm a tiny wooden stylus, his first quill, now talisman. Julio hands you a vial of ink blacker than monastery wine, and mutters, "Write immortally." Lady Isolde, cloaked, sings a snatch of ciphered chant. Its notes map where to hide the books outside Cordoba. The gate opens. Hooves clop forward. You look back once. The monastery stands stony, silent, heroic in its terror. You wonder if false walls matter when the whole world is turning into one gigantic inquisition. But hope whispers that roads, like sentences, can carry contraband ideas farther than tyrants can gallop. Ahead lies bandit country, border posts, desert heat, perhaps betrayal. Yet, somewhere beyond, a library waits that judges books by wisdom, not by chains. You tighten your grip on the reins and feel the oilcloth bundle beneath your cloak shift, breathing like a small caged phoenix yearning for open skies. Wind slaps the canvas awning of the wagon like an impatient drummer, while the mule lines clatter into a hesitant trot, and you taste iron on the back of your tongue, that metallic tang that arrives whenever the world is about to rewrite its own rules. The monastery's bell fades behind the ridgeline, replaced by a hush so wide it feels alive. No scriptorium murmur, no candle crackle, just the creak of wheels and the soft conspiratorial shuffle of contraband parchment hidden beneath crates of onions. Somewhere inside one of those crates, Sappho sleeps beside tubers, waiting to scandalize the Mediterranean. The caravan master, Señor Velasco, a man whose eyebrows alone could smuggle secrets, rides ahead, humming a Sephardic lament. He thinks you're ecclesiastical accountants bound for Toledo to inspect tithe ledgers. The disguise is thin, but Velasco would guide a procession of dancing bears if coin jingled. Lady Isolde keeps pace on a palfrey the color of fresh parchment, cloak hooded, face feigning boredom. Julio rides behind, pretending to catalog medicinal plants, but mostly stealing glances at passing herbs like they might reveal the future. You clutch Reluctance's reins and rehearse the ciphered hymn under your breath.
Those notes are now longitude, the rest's interval, the melody a coffin code only 4 hearts fully know. By noon, the road rises into slate-colored hills chiseled by gullies. Pines lean into the wind, whispering a chorus of needles. You notice hoofprints along the verge, fresh, deep, pointed north. Bandits or patrol? Velasco halts the train, dismounts with a groan, and digs fingers into the impressions. Too light for soldiers, he mutters, too neat for thieves. You exchange looks with Lady Isolde. Couriers, perhaps, ecclesiastical ones, which means word of the papal bull has overtaken you already. You press on. Afternoon heat peels the fragrance out of cedar barrels. Flies orbit the mules in manic spirals. Giulio passes you a flask of watered wine laced with mint. It tastes like courage that realizes it's counterfeit but tries anyway. He confesses the ink vial he gave you is almost empty. The next batch requires galls and iron filings, none of you packed. We'll improvise, you tell him. We always do. He nods, though worry puckers his brow like a poorly stretched parchment. As shadows lengthen, Velasco steers the caravan off the Roman road onto a lesser track, to avoid toll keepers and other curious eyes. The shortcut plunges into a gorge where dusk clings even at noon. Rocks overhead grimace like gargoyles as you descend switchbacks. You can't shake the feeling the canyon itself is inhaling you. When reluctance balks at a hairpin bend, you bribe him forward with a carrot you stole from supper rations. The mule chews resentfully. Trust between smugglers is never unconditional. At camp that night, you pitch tents under a leaning cork oak. Firelight paints everyone in flickers. Lady Isolde produces a lute small enough to hide inside a saddlebag, strums a minor progression, and sings a lullaby in Mozarabic so bitter-sweet it could cut through chainmail. Her voice draws Velasco's hired drovers closer. They tip shadows across the fire, faces softening. Music, you realize, is the oldest forged passport. No border guard can confiscate a melody. When the drovers drift to sleep, you, Giulio, and Isolde crouch by a second, smaller fire deep in the shrubs. Giulio unrolls a parchment sketching the next week's route. Through the Plateau of Bones, named for sheep, hopefully, then across the Tagus at Talavera, then south to the Sierra Morena passes. He warns of patrols near Talavera. Rumor says the Archbishop's men are searching wagons for pagan astronomy. You all chuckle at the notion of soldiers sifting star charts like pigs sniffing truffles, but the laughter fractures into uneasy silence. You decide to review the cargo. Again. Beneath onions lies a false floor. Lift board, reveal linen bundles. You check the oilcloth. Dry, intact. The Book of Inverted Saints sits snug against a folio of herbal drawings by a Moorish physician who believed every malady resonates with a planetary chord. Next to them, the Babylonian star charts, rolled tight, sealed with wax. You tilt an ear. The books seem to hum faintly, though that might be your pulse. You whisper an apology for the jostling and replace the planks. Dawn smudges the sky peach as the convoy winds out of the gorge onto high plains where grasses wave like restless congregations. A shepherd boy on a ridge raises a hand. You raise yours back, feeling like actors in rival plays acknowledging the audience. Mid-morning, Velasco spots dust plumes behind, 3 riders gaining. He orders a quick formation shuffle. Heavy barrels moved outward, valuables inward, travelers instructed to look bored. The riders close. Clerical tabards, iron caps, crossbows slung. One soldier has a beard so pale it looks bleached by fear. Another carries a scroll case sealed with ecclesiastical ribbon. They hail Velasco, demand to search for contraband writings. You dismount, adopting the air of an overworked scribe whose biggest sin is decimal misplacement. You display a ledger of fictional tithes, mumble about delayed audits, inflate boredom until it hangs in the air like stale incense. Julio moans about inventory delays. Isolde recites psalm verses until even the horses look sleepy. The bearded guard pries open a crate, finds onions and weevil-chewed flour. He sneezes, curses, waves you on. As they ride off, you release a breath that contained an entire universe of unspoken heresies. 2 days later, thunderheads bruise the horizon. Velasco wants to camp near an abandoned watchtower for shelter. The tower stands like a broken quill, half collapsed, yet its cellar provides a rainproof nook where you stash the precious bundles while storms batter the plains. Lightning sketches veins across the heavens. Wind roars biblical commentary. Everyone dozes fitfully amid dripping masonry. At first light, you wake to find Julio missing. Panic slashes through fatigue. You track footprints outside, his boots plus smaller ones, child-sized? The trail leads to the tower's far side, where Julio kneels before a ragged boy of maybe 10 holding a knife made from a horseshoe shard. The kid's face is mud-streaked, eyes feral. He demands food. Julio offers bread. The knife lowers. You join them, noticing the boy's satchel crammed with pilfered parchment scraps, drawings of plants, crudely annotated. He's been stealing your refuse pages. A scavenger scholar. Julio introduces him as Mateo, an orphan wandering ruins since plague took his village. He collects drawings because they explain how the world breathes. You and Isolde exchange a glance. The caravan just gained an unscheduled passenger. Velasco protests, mouths to feed, risks, blah blah, but capitulates when Mateo accurately identifies 2 poisonous berries near the campsite and prevents the mules from grazing. Knowledge buys tickets. Back on the road, Mateo peppers you with questions. Do stars die? Can ink rot? Why do authorities fear books? You answer as best you can. Yes, eventually. Yes, tragically. Because ideas perform jailbreaks on minds. He nods solemnly, as if confirming rumors. That evening, you set camp beside a ruined Roman bridge, whose arches still reflect moonlight like silver, parentheses. While others sleep, you climb onto the crumbling parapet with the Gospel of the Laughing Christ in hand. You read by moonglow, the part where Christ, emerging from the tomb, tells the women, "Tell Peter I borrowed oblivion and returned it with interest." You try not to laugh loudly, but the line tickles the marrow. You wonder if laughter might be the truest sacrament. Below, footsteps crunch. Lady Isolde appears carrying 2 cups of honeyed wine. She sits, legs dangling over the void, and asks if faith can survive humor. You suggest humor might be faith's secret twin. She proposes dedicating a hidden shelf to comedic theology, wherever the books eventually live. The idea pleases you enough to toast the moon. Unbeknownst to either of you, Julia watches from the shadows, face unreadable. Crossing the Tagus proves trickier. The Talavera Bridge is choked with merchants. Patrols poke spears into cargo like toddlers testing pudding. Velasco opts for a ford upriver, known only to smugglers and contraband sheep. The detour adds a day, but spares interrogation. At the ford, water rises thigh deep. Mules snort protest, but wade. You walk beside reluctance, boots filling with river-cold secrets. Halfway across, current tugs a crate loose, one filled with mundane salters. You lunge, catch it, but your cloak snags on a branch and you tumble. Water roars into your ears. Pages flash before your eyes, literal pages if the crate splits. Giulio hauls you upright, cursing Italian prayers. You sputter gratitude, clutch crate, wade onward. On the far bank, you open the crate. Salters soaked but salvageable. Beneath them, unbeknownst to you until now, Giulio had hidden the vial of ink inside a hollow candle. Had that crate vanished, so would the last of the midnight alphabet. You vow to tie everything with triple knots henceforth, including your own reckless limbs.
The plateau south of Talavera is endless ochre dotted with Dehesa oaks, where black pigs snuffle for acorns. Smell of cured ham drifts from distant smokehouses, tormenting your fast-thin stomach. Velasco buys a leg of jamon from a farmer. Over supper, Mateo carves slices with surgical precision, telling stories learned from windmills. You notice how Isolde encourages the boy to write these tales in a small notebook scavenged from scrap. Literacy seedlings. Night watch rotates. Your shift comes under a sky drunk with stars. You recite coordinates disguised in chant, ensuring you still remember every shelf the cipher maps. Then you notice a faint glow on the northern horizon. Campfires, maybe 100. An army? Giulio awakens, peers through a small brass tube. He guesses they're pilgrims en route to Guadalupe. Safe, but you resolve to steer wide. 3 mornings later, you crest a hill and behold the Sierra Marina, purple, jagged teeth biting the skyline. Crossing them means narrow passes, cliff-edge trails, and rumors of highwaymen who quote scripture while robbing travelers. Velasco hires 2 additional guards at a mining village, Basque twins, silent as sword hilts. They brandish slings rather than blades, explaining stones are quieter than steel. You approve. Books prefer stealth. The first pass. Puerto de los Bandidos. Ominous, yes. Snakes between ravines carpeted in broom shrubs. Clouds tangle on peaks. Drizzle slicks the path. At a blind bend, a figure steps from rocks. A woman in motley garb, hat plumed, crossbow leveled. Another appears on the ledge above, bow drawn. Within seconds, 8 highway folk surround the caravan, weapons trained, yet polite. Their leader, the plumed woman, introduces herself as Captain Zarzamora, defender of travelers against the tyranny of boredom and taxation. She demands reading material, not money, claims her band trades stories for supplies. You glance at Velasco. He shrugs, as if to say, better books than blood. Zarzamora requests a title list. You offer damp salters and a romance of Charlemagne's socks. She sighs dramatically. We desire forbidden fruit, not church crumbs. Tension spikes. You weigh options, then produce a symbol page you can spare. An illustrated recipe from Grandmother's Anonymous describing how to cure melancholy with chocolate, chili, and loud drum circles. Zarzamora inspects it, eyes widening. She proclaims the tax paid, grants safe passage, and gifts you a pouch of cacao beans in return. Before disappearing, she whispers, "Guard your pages. Other robbers crave harsher verses." Breath returns to lungs across the group. The Basque twins never flinched. Velasco mutters praise to every saint of travel and to Coco.
Descending the southern slope, the air warms like an exhale from North Africa. Olive groves appear, terraces glinting silver green. You pass villages where Arabic inscriptions still adorn fountains despite decrees for Christian repainting. People greet you with salam and paz interchangeably. Cultures here braid rather than fight, at least on the surface. Granada lies 2 days ahead, but first, the dusty town of Baños de la Encina with its red stone castle. Velasco arranges lodging in a hostel run by a widow known for almond pastries. While you negotiate mule stabling, a priest in black approaches, eyes sharp as quills. He inquires about your destination. You feed him the Toledo audit story. He smiles thinly, blessing your journey. Only after he leaves does Mateo whisper that the priest's ring bore the seal of the Inquisitor General. Spines tingle like plucked lutes.
That night, you fortify the hiding planks with iron nails scavenged from a broken yoke. You station a Basque twin to sleep atop the cargo. Isolde pens new cipher verses referencing moon phases to adjust drop-off timing should Granada prove unsafe. Julio tests the cacao beans in a makeshift brew. The bitterness jolts everyone awake past midnight. At dawn, multiple events collide. First, Velasco is gone. Bed empty, horse missing, note pinned to pillow. Forgive the necessity. Debt collectors. You curse, but respect his survival instinct. More urgent, town gates are sealed. Soldiers search wagons. The abbot's fears have galloped faster than you thought. Panic nips heels, but you marshal calm. Decision, split forces. The twins will create a diversion, claim stolen relics, lead guards on wild chase. You, Isolde, Julio, and Mateo will guide the mule cart through a disused irrigation channel that skirts walls, a route the widow describes in exchange for 2 psalms sung over her husband's grave. Plan ignites immediately. Twins march toward gatehouse waving a reliquary borrowed from the hostile chapel. Guards converge. Meanwhile, you guide reluctance down the channel, ankle-deep mud, reeds whipping faces. Mateo trots ahead, scouting. Halfway, a culvert forces you to unload crates, push them through one by one. The Book of Inverted Saints nearly drops into sludge. You catch it, heart combusting. Emerging beyond walls, you reassemble wagon -1 wheel that cracked during the detour. Julio improvises replacement using barrel staves and rope. It wobbles, but moves. You flee south along farm tracks, chased only by skylarks. At a fig orchard, you pause to breathe and wait for the twins. Hours pass. Dust plume appears. They gallop up laughing, pockets heavier with guard wages liberated during the distraction. Heroes of subterfuge. With Velasco missing, leadership defaults to you and Isolde. You study the last map. Granada tomorrow if roads remain open. Tonight, camp by a ruined Visigoth church whose apse contains fresco remnants, angels with astrolabes, unusual. You interpret it as auspicious. Around the fire, you inventory again, obsessive but necessary. All 7 treasures intact. Addition, Zarzamora's cacao, Twins' coin, Mateo's notebook of windmill tales. Your library is already evolving. Knowledge multiplies like bacteria whenever curiosity hosts it. Sleep drifts over camp until screech of tires, no, cartwheels, jolts you awake. 5 silhouettes approach, desert traders packing silks. Their leader hails you in accented Castilian, requests water. You oblige. In exchange, he offers news. Granada's emirs have pledged safe haven to any scholar fleeing northern persecution, but rumors say Castilian forces plan siege within months. Delay could strand you in crossfire. Decision becomes razor sharp. Reach the Albaycin quarter fast, Deposit the hoard in the House of Wisdom there, then consider next steps.
Pre-dawn, you roll out. The cart's makeshift wheel groans. Every mile is a prayer for wood fibers. Hills part to reveal the Vega, Granada's fertile plain, snow-capped Sierra Nevada looming like a prophecy of silence. Alhambra's towers glimmer ahead, pink under early sun, stone poems yearning skyward. You taste arrival and risk in equal measure. City gates bustle with merchants. Moorish guards eye the mule, but wave you through after Giulio bribes them with fig jam and flattery about courtly gardens. Streets braid uphill, narrow as accusations. You navigate toward the library compound recommended by the desert traders. A tiled archway opens onto a courtyard where fountains murmur equations older than Greek geometry. Scholars in robes of saffron and indigo debate beneath orange trees. You park the wagon beneath a pergola draped in wisteria. For the first time in weeks, your shoulders unclench. The curator, Hakim ibn Rashid, greets you warmly after Isolde introduces herself in flawless Arabic. He listens to your story with eyes that flicker between sorrow and glee. He offers sanctuary for the collection, plus copying resources to replicate every text. In return, he asks only that the originals remain accessible to all faiths. You agree before he finishes speaking. It's the dream the abbot scarcely dared imagine. Unloading becomes ceremony. Scholars form a chain, passing crates gingerly into a cool vault scented with cedar. When you lift the oilcloth bundle, you pause, stroke the leather spine of each book, then hand them off. The vault door closes with a sigh, not a slam. You feel like a parent leaving children at a school that might actually deserve them. Hakim invites you to view the scriptorium, spaces lit by skylights, scribes copying Sanskrit mathematics alongside Hebrew poetry. You swallow a lump of wonder. Mateo peers around, eyes star-wide. Hakim assigns him to a tutor. The twins receive stipends as guards. Giulio heads to the medicinal garden, already theorizing opium dosages in Arabic. Isolde joins a circle of philosophers laughing at Aristotelian footnotes. And you? What do you do when the mission ends? Hakim asks gently. You realize your mission hasn't ended. It's mutated. The cipher map still hums. Other caches dot Europe like embers. Someone must gather them, replicate them, plant them in fertile minds. You picture the monastery, the abbot's anxious beard. You vow to send word. First drop delivered, Phoenix unchained. Then you think of Captain Zarzamora, of the pale-bearded guard, of Velasco wherever debt led him, of future bands yet unwritten. Battles ahead. By twilight, Granada's rooftops glow rosy. From a tower, a muezzin's call overlaps church bells from a nearby parish, discordant, beautiful. You stand on a terrace, feel the city inhale centuries. In your pocket, Marcus's wooden stylus warms against skin. You dip it in Giulio's last reserves of ink and begin a letter. Dear brother, the words are safe for now, but the road continues. Shall I keep walking? And as night folds over the Alhambra, you sense that somewhere in the dark beyond those walls, inquisitors recalibrate their maps, censors sharpen quills, and bandits polish crossbows hungering for literature they cannot read. But for this moment, wind rustles orange blossoms like pages turning themselves, and forbidden books exhale dust that smells curiously like hope. Street lamps of hammered bronze flicker awake one by one along Granada's Darro River,
their reflections trembling like ink drops in a basin. And already you feel the city rearranging its secrets in response to your footfalls. The house of wisdom behind you exhales the cedar-scented breath of freshly uncrated books. But the pages are hardly settled before rumor blows through the Elbaicin like sand off the desert. A papal delegation has entered Andalusia, bearing warrants that treat ink the way soldiers treat gunpowder. Inquisition inspectors, 4 dozen Dominican hounds, and, whisper it, an archivist known as La Muda, the mute woman, whose silence is said to make confessions tumble out of suspects like loose buttons. Hakim ibn Rashid summons you to the top-lit reading room, heron-thin fingers stroking a folio of Euclid as if counting pulses. He speaks softly so the fountain's murmur swallows the words. Copying will take months. If the delegation arrives before we finish, they will burn every quire. I need time, and time must be purchased with distraction. Outside the lattice window, Isolde sketches the courtyard geometry in charcoal, transforming worry into perspective lines. Giulio surfaces from the garden, arms fragrant with rue and rosemary, announcing he has isolated an oak gall pigment that dries twice as fast, but it might corrode weaker vellum. Matteo, quill behind ear, chases a stray peacock whose tail feathers look like miniature cosmos. You, though, parse Hakim's plea. Create a diversion large enough to lure the hunters away while the scriptorium labors. That means going back onto roads that echo with wanted posters, into provinces where literacy itself is grounds for torchlight. Exactly the sort of errand you hope to avoid, for at least a week of uninterrupted sleep. Yet dusk hurls a gauntlet you cannot ignore. The caravan will ride again, but this time smaller, surgical. Destination, the Cueva de los Murciélagos in the limestone Sierra outside Córdoba, where a retired Mozarab hermit reputedly guards a pre-Islamic scroll of Ptolemaic star cycles that the Inquisition covets as astrological poison. Steal it first, hide it elsewhere, leave the papal hunters chasing ghosts. Simple, except the cave lies inside a cordon of Almohad deserters who swapped faith for plunder. Hakim provides a map stitched onto silk, easier to swallow in extremis, he says with a glint, and hands you a copper token stamped with the library's sigil, the only payment he can spare. If the scroll survives, he whispers, so does the index that points to Alexandria's lost quadrant. Preparations unfold like hurried origami. The Basque twins sharpen slingstones and refuse horses. Mountains, they claim, prefer feet. Isolde lowers her lute's pitch a whole step so its melancholy can weave through tavern din unnoticed. Giulio distills ink into travel flasks, then surprises you with a bundle of paper thin as the skin on cooled milk. Italian merchants call it rag carta, cheaper to lose than vellum. Matteo begs to join. You hesitate. He's barely more than a whisper in height, but Hakim insists a boy draws less suspicion than a scholar. You relent, knotting a small blade inside Matteo's boot and teaching him the double-tap knock that signals retreat. Night before departure, you climb the Alhambra's unfinished watchtower. Moonlight cold forges the city in silver. In the hush, you pull out Marcus's stylus and scratch a new cipher verse on rag carta. Don't trust the quiet of finished missions. It is only the prologue catching its breath. You fold the slip into a ring and slip it onto the branch of an orange tree, an offering to whoever might need courage next. Dawn stains the Sierra Nevada rose gold as the team slips through the Puerta de Elvira, cart reduced to a single mule and panniers stuffed with loaves, water skins, medical herbs, blank carta, and one hollow gourd hiding the copper token.
Granada recedes behind terraces of olive and almond, while lapwings scribble crooked exclamation marks overhead. By noon, you thread the olive-gray Despeñaperros Gorge, where Romans once marched elephants. Mateo names each striated layer aloud, turning geology into lullaby. The heat is a blanket soaked in forge sparks. Shade rarely lingers long enough to be thanked. At the inn of Los Tres Suspiros, you down chickpea stew spiked with cumin, wash dust from teeth with watered wine, and eavesdrop on travelers. A muleteer reports a Dominican convoy halted at Alcalá la Real, one day north, questioning anyone carrying satchels fat with paper. Another boasts of watching a silent woman in black gloves unroll a piece of charred vellum and read the ashes like braille. La Muda's legend lengthens your shadow on the tavern wall. Past Jaén, the road kinks along olive groves whose trunks twist like arthritic philosophers. Storm clouds gather bruises. Thunder rattles olive presses. You seek shelter in a shepherd's hut, perfumed with lanolin and fresh cheese. Rain drums the thatch, but inside, Isolde plucks a hush from the lute, singing a Sephardic melody about Miriam hiding letters in clay jars so her sons could learn forbidden grammar. The song threads itself through the storm until even the lightning seems to crack on beat. When silence returns, Mateo asks why music survives when books burn. You answer, because songs can hide inside lungs. You can't put a torch to breath. In the morning, fog smears the valley. The Basque twins spot hoofprints converging. 8 riders, wide-hoofed destriers, speed closer than patrols. Bandits, maybe, or worse. Mercenary script hunters paid by inquisitors to seize manuscripts on the black market. You hide pathside beneath a tumble of limestone. Riders pass, Andalusian freelancers with scimitars, saddlebags bulging with confiscated folios, one bound in red goat. The sight boils your blood, those pages likely marching to a bonfire. Giulio grips your shoulder. Steel robs quickly, but rust works slower. Yet you memorize the lead rider's hawk tattoo. Debts will be reckoned in time. By dusk, your party reaches Zujeros, a hamlet hugged to a cliff like a barnacle. From here, goat tracks climb toward Cueva de los Murciélagos. Local legend says the cave's galleries breathe out vapors that erode memory. Pilgrims leave votive carvings hoping to forget heartbreak. You pay an apiarist 3 silver coins to board Reluctance and set off on foot beneath a sky studded with planets bright enough to read by. The ascent is steep. Scree gives under boots, and once Mateo slips, nearly tumbling into dwarf oaks. A Basque twin catches him mid-air, presents the boy an acorn as souvenir of choosing ground over gravity. Near midnight, you crest a saddle. Moon-glazed limestone forms jaws around a hollow mouth exhaling bat squeaks. The cave. At the entrance stands a figure cloaked in patchwork wool, leaning on a staff carved with constellations. His beard flows like root systems. His eyes, when they catch torchlight, reflect galaxies of solitude. The hermit bows without speaking, traces Orion on the air, then beckons you inside. The cave surprises, not dank gloom, but vaulted halls glittering with calcite chandeliers. In an alcove, he tends a fire of olive wood, whose smoke veils the ceiling like parchment curls. He lays out bowls of chickpea mash and quince. Still silent, he unlatches a stone niche. Inside, the Ptolemaic scroll, protected by waxed linen, ink green-black even after centuries. He unrolls one panel, star calendars annotated in Greek, Latin, Arabic, and an unknown script of spirals.
You feel your pulse sync with the drawn planets. Through gestures, the hermit conveys his pact. He'll relinquish the scroll if you replace it with a text equally precious, value measured not by rarity, but by bravery. You hesitate. Nothing in your satchel equals a millennium-old cosmos. Then Matteo steps forward, offers his notebook of windmill tales. The hermit studies the pages, head tilted, lips shaping silent syllables. He nods, tears misting his star-glimmer eyes, and clasps the boy's hand. Deal struck. You wrap the scroll in oiled silk, slip it inside a hollow reed case Giulio prepared. As you turn to leave, the hermit presses a small object into your palm, a disc of polished obsidian etched with 2 lines, one straight, one broken. Giulio squints. Aztec glyph for eclipse. The hermit points southwest, perhaps a warning. Descent begins before dawn. Fog clots the ravines. Halfway down, the Basque twins freeze. Fresh boot prints interlaced with goat hoof scratches. Someone else visited the cave hours earlier. You quicken pace, but at a bend, crossbow bolts hiss past. Ambush. The hawk-tattooed mercenary and his crew emerge from pines, demanding the scroll and any other venomous words. Their leader grins, revealing teeth filed to triangles. The mute woman pays gold for silence, friends. No time for diplomacy. The twins sling stones with whip-crack speed. First bandit drops like marionette with cut strings. Isolde draws a dagger, slicing through a bolt mid-flight, or so memory will exaggerate. Giulio flings a vial of fast-dry ink. It explodes on a bandit's visor, blinding him, black tears running. Matteo, trembling, recalls the acorn, loads it into a spare sling, fires. The acorn ricochets off the hawkman's temple, dazing him just enough for you to tackle him downhill. You knot wrists with his own reins, strip his saddlebags. 10 confiscated folios, plus a sealed letter bearing Lamuda's insignia. Before fleeing, you whisper in his ear a single verse from the Gospel of the Laughing Christ. His eyes widen, not in fear, but confusion, and by the time he deciphers the joke, you're gone. You hide under midday heat inside a dry riverbed fringed with oleander. Giulio examines the captured folios, mostly medical treatises, but one is a Catalan translation of the Tao Te Ching, accompanied by marginal sketches of wind-propelled automata. Isolde suggests swapping one treatise for a forged pamphlet praising church taxes to mislead the Inquisition. Giulio prefers depositing all at the House of Wisdom. You postpone verdict. Evening drapes violet when you reach the apiarist's hut. Reluctance greets you with disapproving bray, mule humor. The apiarist warns that Dominican riders passed at noon asking for a lute player, a mute boy, and a scribe who smells of acids. The descriptions tighten nettles around your chest. Decision: bypass Granada. Deliver scroll to a safer haven. The printing presses sprouting in Valencian warehouses, maybe. Hakim can handle copying without original if given high-quality rubbings, which Giulio begins making by moonlight, pressing charcoal dust parchment over the scroll's symbols. Next dawn, you ride east across the Sierra Duetor. Sunflowers pivot to watch your passage. Matteo dozes against a pannier, clutching his now empty notebook. You promise new pages in Valencia. At a crossroads shrine, you leave the stolen letter from Lamuda, weighted beneath a pebble, decoy breadcrumb. The Basque twins scatter false trails, footprints leading nowhere, snippets of psalter pages tied to juniper bushes.
You hope the hunters chase phantoms until exhaustion becomes enlightenment.
Day 4. Rations thin. Olive groves become vineyards. You trade a medical treatise to a vintner for bread, cheese, and a skin of Grenache. That night, camp by a ruined watchtower again. History likes repeating sets. Matteo asks to read the Tao translation. You oblige. By firelight, he mouths, "Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom." He closes the manuscript, pronounces, "Then the Inquisition are only half wise." You laugh, a sound brittle with fatigue, yet steadfast. Morning sun reveals the Mediterranean, a blade of blue on horizon. But before you celebrate, distant hooves drum. Dust plume multiplies. 24 riders, banners white with black crosses. Dominican cavalry. You veer onto a shepherd path climbing limestone terraces. Reluctance wheezes but ascends. Bolts whistle. A stone grazes Giulio's arm. At a saddle, a derelict Roman aqueduct yawns across a gorge. Arches intact in parts, collapsed in others. Twins signal a mad plan. Drive the mule across, collapse a span behind to block pursuit. You lash panniers tight, coax reluctance onto the mossy conduit. Wind howls through missing stones. Mid-crossing, twins wedge iron spikes into crumbling mortar, leverage a beam. A section groans, teeters. You sprint, dragging mule. Last arch falls, thunder of stone smashing ravine. Dust mushroom rises. On far side, you collapse, lungs burning. The pursuers rein up at the void, too wide to jump, too angry to retreat. One raises a crossbow, but the distance swallows the bolt mid-air. You offer a scholar's salute, finger to temple, palm to horizon, then limp downhill toward the sea. At the port village of Salobreña, you bribe a sardine merchant for passage to Valencia on his coastal felucca. He demands half the copper token as down payment. Isolde splits it clean with a jeweler's saw. The shards look like twin moons, omens of cycles incomplete. You board at dusk. Sails bloom like parchment catching wind. The sea smells of salt and beginnings. Night voyage is uneasy. Waves slap hull, rigging groans. Giulio tends his bruised arm with rosemary poultice. Matteo drafts new tales on rag carta, this time of caves that trade stars for stories. You consider parchment in the cargo hold, Ptolemaic scroll hidden inside a barrel of anchovies to mask its musk. If seawater leaks, the cosmos could unravel into fish brine. You wedge the barrel higher, mutter apologies to constellations. Dawn off Cape Palos, paints clouds persimmon. Dolphins leap, escort. You almost believe danger drowned in last night's wake, until lookout shouts, "Sail on horizon, square-rigged caravel bearing church pennant." The captain curses, his fishing craft slower, but coastal shallows ahead hide shoals where larger ship must veer. He angles toward them. Minutes stretch like vellum drying. Church vessel closes, but at last halts, unwilling to risk keel. You drift into coves spider-webbed with fishing nets. Safe, for now. Valencia rises noon-bright alabaster churches, silk-draped markets, new German-style presses clattering in converted warehouses. You find lodging near the Lonja de la Seda, where printers set type faster than monks blink. A master printer, Doña Maravillas, ink-smudged spectacles magnifying eyes, greets you like kin after reading Hakim's ciphered recommendation you'd tucked into the scroll's wrapper. She offers presses, paper, apprentices who speak 6 languages, and, miraculously, barrels of oak gall ink.
In exchange, she requests only first printing rights to any previously untranslated text and the privilege to teach Matteo typesetting. Deal signed over cups of horchata sprinkled with cinnamon. Inside her press room, the scroll is unrolled across a maple table. Apprentices hover, reverent. Doña Maravillas sketches movable type plates for the Greek, Latin, Arabic. She'll carve new blocks for the unknown spiral script. If language is starlight, she says, running fingertips over glyphs, I will mint constellations on paper. Giulio assists, concocting ink that glimmers indigo when dry, midnight captured at noon. The Basque twins volunteer night guard duty, slings loaded with lead-type offcuts. During following weeks, you coordinate copying, editing, forging distribution routes that dodge censors. Isolde whittles lute tunes into mnemonic devices to teach apprentices proper galley imposition. Matteo smells of lead and learning, proud in inkblot apron. Each fresh sheet drying on lines overhead looks like sailcloth ready for voyages of the mind. But cathedrals cast long shadows, and news creeps in like weevils. La Muda has reached Granada, found the decoy letter, deciphered your bluff. Witnesses claim she smiled, first smile ever recorded, before ordering roads to Valencia sealed. Armored patrols now interrogate every cart bearing barrels, anchovy smell doubly suspicious. Time again thins. Doña Maravillas proposes radical acceleration. Print 100 impressions of the star cycles. Pack in crates disguised as Valencian citrus. Ship on 4 separate galleys this very week. 1 to Naples, 1 to Marseille, 1 to Tangier, 1 along the coast to Barcelona. If any 2 survive, knowledge survives. You oversee crate stenciling, fragile, early harvest oranges. Giulio embeds desiccated orange blossoms atop manuscripts to fool noses. The Basque twins craft false bills of lading. Isolde writes a sea shanty encoding coordinates of the hermit's cave should future seekers doubt provenance. On loading day, drizzle slicks docks. Seagulls rant overhead. Crates disappear into holds. You feel like parent again, waving children onto school buses steered by Poseidon. But you keep 1 crate behind, for Hakim, proof of success. The mule cart, now chalked with Valencia license, rattles north along coastal road at sunset, scrolls safely within, disguised beneath eels for tomorrow's market. You intend to meet a courier caravan bound for Granada via back valleys clear of Inquisition eyes. Late that night, camped among carob trees, you draft a letter to the abbot. Tell him bats still guard scroll-shaped shadows, that caves exchange stars for stories, that monks behind false walls are no longer the only threads refusing to be cut. You end, the world's fire is hungry, but we have learned to feed it decoys while love smuggles the real feast elsewhere. A twig snaps. The Basque twins tense, but it's only Matteo returning from the trees, face lit with idea. He asks if, after Granada, the mission could expand east, Constantinople, maybe Alexandria. You tussle his hair, promise maps instead of answers. As you douse the fire, the night sky leans close, constellations bright as wet ink. Somewhere out there, La Muda is tightening nets, but here, amid rustling carob pods, pages multiply like seeds. You climb into your cloak, heart thrumming the rhythm of presses beating back darkness. Wind unzips the pre-dawn silence along the coastal road, pulling briny threads off the Mediterranean and weaving them into your cloak until the fabric smells half of salt, half of ink.
Behind the cart, reluctance plods with philosophical resignation, hoofbeats muffled in dry dust, while the crate of Valencian oranges thumps softly against wooden slats. Each knock a heartbeat that reminds you the Ptolemaic star cycles are still yours, still hidden, still one sharp turn from ruin. You have 14 hours to reach Hakim's library in Granada before the Inquisition shutters the city gates for the weekly candle procession. 14 hours, 3 mountain passes, 1 mule determined to question every uphill gradient, and the rumor of La Muda gliding south like a shadow on skates. Sunrise doesn't arrive. It sidles in, tentative, as though scouting for ambushes. Pale gold ignites the serrated peaks of the Sierra de la Alfaguara, slanting low enough to paint each olive tree with a monk-like halo. Isolde hums a chord progression in Dorian mode to coax tempo into the mule's stride. Matteo taps a spoon against the crate in sync, and Giulio, riding point, sprinkles crushed rosemary onto the path to mask the cart's scent. Bandit dogs loathe resin. The Basque twins jog flank, sling pouches bulging with lead type, an alphabet ready to be weaponized. First obstacle, Las Cuchillas Gorge, where the Roman road narrows to the width of a monk's vow and cliff walls loom like open ledgers ready to record missteps. Halfway through, an echoing whistle slices the hush. The twins freeze. You catch a flicker of movement on the rim above, a silhouette wearing a broad brim hat pinned with a hawk feather. Not the hawk-tattooed mercenary you stunned back in Cordoba. He'd never risk you seeing him twice, but maybe his employer. You nudge reluctance into a trot. Pebbles rain from above, clattering like castanets. At the gorge's end, a barricade waits. 3 wagons toppled sideways, wheels spinning idly, manned by crossbowmen in mismatched armor. Their leader steps forward, plumes of dust curling around his boots, and unfurls a parchment sealed with black wax. "By ecclesiastical decree," he proclaims, "all cargo bound for Granada must be inspected. The church safeguards souls and citrus." His smirk could peel oranges quicker than any knife.
You dismount, palms visible, voice calm. Merely fruit for the Alqueceria market. They bruise easily. Your inspection may cost you half the load's value. Giulio brandishes a ledger forged overnight. Purchase orders, port stamps, even a doodle of St. Clement blessing a crate. The leader flits a glance at the document. Slow reader, good sign. Then waves 2 men forward.
As they pry at the lid, Isolde serenades softly, lullaby for suspicion. Matteo clutches his spoon. You feel the crate shiver. Its top layer really is oranges, but beneath, between straw and blossom sachets, lies history that refuses to play dead. One guard plucks a fruit, squeezes juice onto his thumb, tastes, grunts approval. Another rummages deeper, fingers brushing parchment edges, yet he pays no mind. His hands return sticky with citrus oil, sensory lie persuading brain that all is rind and seed. They reseal the crate. Papers stamped, bribe implied but not claimed, the barricade parts. Past the gorge, the road widens into sun-drenched terraces. You exhale, realizing lungs were on strike. The twins laugh too loud, relief crashing into silliness. One juggles 3 bullets of lead type, spelling IRE until the letters blur. Moments like this stitch camaraderie into something tougher than armor. Mid-morning, as cicadas rehearse for noon, you veer onto a goat track, bypassing Wiesnar to avoid tax collectors who memorize mule faces. Dust becomes mist as elevation climbs. Pines exhale turpentine bliss. Yet complacency is ambidextrous. It pats your back while slipping a dagger under your ribs. Cresting a ridge, you spy smoke spiraling from the next valley, in a pattern too deliberate for shepherds. Telescoped through Giulio's copper viewing tube, the plume resolves into triple braids. Coded signal used by inquisitorial scouts. They're flagging Granada, suspects approaching along northern spur. You pivot into contingency Alpha Gray. Split the party. Giulio and Isolde guide the mule and crate via a disused irrigation canal toward the Sacromonte caves on Granada's fringe. The twins escort Matteo along a cork oak ravine into the city through the Romelicate at dusk. You, carrying only a satchel of forged travel passes and Hakim's silk map, will enter alone through the western Vega orchards to misdirect any watchers. Rendezvous inside the Alcaiceria Silk Bazaar an hour after nightfall. If anyone fails to show, fallback point is the cistern beneath the ruined bathhouse of Calle Sierpe. Signals: owl hoot for approach, cough for safe entry, fragment of Miriam's song for proof of identity. Plans scatter like starlings, and so do you.
Granada's walls appear by late afternoon, gold-veined ramparts basking under indifferent sun. Farmers lead donkeys stacked with onions through Elvira Gate, while guards check loads for contraband letters from Valencia, a new order posted just this morning. Perfect timing. You adopt Farmer Gate, shoulders stooped, straw hat shading scholar eyes, onions swinging from a yoke balanced across your back. The guard scans you, bored. You offer a sample onion, wink that it repels plague. He waves you through, nose already wrinkling.
Inside, Granada is a tapestry of contradictions. Muezzin call interlaces with church bells. Silk merchants haggle near sandalmakers. Children chase each other between stalls stacked with sugarcane and sheepskins. Your path threads alleys scented with saffron and soaproot until the great arch of the Alcaiceria swallows you. Sunset filters through lattice roofs, painting the market coral. You assume position near a spice seller's brazier, eyes on entry arches. A quarter hour passes, nothing. Another 15 minutes, still nothing. Market lamps ignite. Twilight slinks over rooftops like an exhausted cat. Fear stirs. Owl hoot? None. Cough signal? Only vendors clearing throats. You pace, discreet.
Then, a shard of melody, barely audible above chatter. Isolde's Dorian phrase, disguised in the yell of a pomegranates vendor. You pivot. She stands beside a pyramid of fruit, loot disguised as firewood bundle. Her eyes flick left, subtle alarm. You follow her glance. Onto a balcony above, a cloaked figure. Female silhouette, posture sinuous, hands gloved black. La Muda. She surveys the bazaar with unsettling stillness, then retreats into shadow. Your pulse becomes snare drum.
Isolde murmurs, Giulio's at cistern with crate. Scouts tailed us, twins and Matteo not seen yet. You nod, purchase 2 pomegranates, one for each word unspoken, and head down Calle Sierpe, Isolde shadowing at a distance.
The bathhouse ruins gape like a toothless grin. You slip through a broken mosaic arch, descend damp stairs to the hypocist, then lower into the cistern chamber. Water mirrors torchlight from Giulio's single lantern. The crate rests on a stone ledge, straw askew, oranges fragrant. Giulio stands guard, arms sling off, but fatigue mottles his eyes. He reports, scouts lost near Sacromonte,
but likely regrouping. Plan Delta emerges. Deliver crate immediately to Hakim via the secret postern under the Darrow embankment rather than risk sunrise transport. That means navigating the Alhambra's sub-basement tunnels, originally Nasrid escape routes, now forgotten by all but rats and librarians with insomnia. Hakim once demonstrated the entrance, a bronze drain cover etched with verses of Al-Mutamid, disguised as storm runoff. Tonight, those tunnels are your safest artery. First, retrieve the missing trio. Without them, knowledge isn't safe. Family is the ultimate manuscript. Julio remains to guard crate. Isolde stays as courier wave, while you surface alone into night thick with jasmine fumes. Street lamps flicker like anxious thoughts. You traverse alleys parallel to the river, scanning for Basque silhouettes. At Plaza Bib Rambla, you find half an answer. A sling bullet engraved IRE, embedded in a wooden stall post, a breadcrumb. Another bullet near the fountain points southeast. You follow into a lane behind the Spice Guild, where torchlight reveals a scuffle aftermath. Two unconscious scouts trussed with rope made from twisted silk waste. A small acorn wedged between one man's teeth. A Mateo calling card. Relief flashes but curdles into urgency. If Mateo fought, danger escalated. Bullet trail leads to the Corral del Carbón, a caravanserai of vaulted brick courtyards, now quiet under moon. Door ajar. Inside, shadows writhe. Torch brought low reveals Basque twin nursing gashed scalp. Mateo beside him, eyes wide but unhurt. Second twin paces, whispers. Ambush while crossing river. Scouts captured them, demanded whereabouts of crate. Twins feigned surrender, sling chaos ensued, but reinforcements imminent. They chose this caravanserai because of only one entrance, easy to defend, easier to trap. You hear bootsteps outside, metal scraping. You gather trio into alcove, shove crates of dried figs to front as barricade. Through crack you spy 5 figures entering, crossbows, tabards with Dominican cross. One carries a hand cannon, new world of hurt. And behind, gloved silence, La Muda herself. Eyes glint like obsidian under cowl. She raises 2 fingers. Scouts fan out. You realize she hunts not just the scroll, but the network. She needs live captives for interrogation by silence, her specialty. Words die before meeting tongue. She can read fear like script. Fight here risks Mateo and library secrets. Need misdirection fierce enough to lure them elsewhere. You whisper to twins, smoke and prophecy. They grin. Twin 1 lights a pouch of ground chili and sage, flings it onto brazier. Acrid smoke billows, stinging eyes, conjuring wails from choking scouts. Twin 2 slings 3 lead letters into wooden beams overhead. Ricochets mimic musket fire. You pull Mateo through servants' corridor toward rear balcony overlooking the Darrow. 10-foot drop into cart path, manageable. Below, a refuse cart loaded with bulrush bundles waits like destiny. You count to 3, push Mateo. He lands soft, waves. Twins follow. You leap last as crossbow bolt thunks into railing near your calf. Driver of cart, startled, takes off instinctively down Riverbank Road. Perfect taxi. You steer bundles over heads as camouflage. Behind, Corral del Carbón belches smoke and curses. La Muda steps onto balcony, gaze tracking cart like Hawkeye's comet. She doesn't shout, she simply raises gloved hand, makes a closing gesture. You feel invisible door slam. She has fixed your trajectory. Cart rattles towards Sacramonte. Halfway, you signal driver to halt near Old Mill House. Pay him 2 onions as fare. He speeds off bewildered. Under moon, you and allies dash through Poplar Grove to Cistern Rendezvous. Isolde opens grate, relief washing her face as you descend. Reunited circle quick inventory. All breathing, crate intact. Time to vanish.
Below the city, tunnels breathe centuries. Brick arches flecked with condensation. Walls flecked with mica glitter that turns lantern glow into starfield. You guide party along Hakim's silk-mapped lines. Left at the Well of Sighs, right at the collapsed prayer niche. Straight until the echo of dripping water doubles back. Echo suddenly triples, footsteps not yours. Lamuda's hunters found a secondary entrance. Julio douses lantern. Dark swallows color, leaving only sound.
You advance by thumb on wall, feeling mortar seams. Twins lag behind to set type trap. Scatter hundreds of tiny metal letters across tunnel floor. Barefoot pursuers will curse, shod ones will skid. Ahead, square of faint light, the bronze drain cover open. Hakim's silhouette beckons, lantern shielded. One by one, you emerge into library subcellar, smelling of cedar and cloves. Monks in brown scapulars glide wordlessly, hands passing from crate to hidden lift. Mateo's eyes widen. Shelves rotate, revealing false wall after wall, each slot holding forbidden volumes wrapped in oilcloth. Here lies the skeleton beneath Europe's skin of piety. Hakim clasps your forearms, gratitude radiating. He signals monks to fetch wine, bread, compress for twins' wound. Yet celebration truncated by distant clatter. Hunters entered tunnels, letters clicking like hail under boots. Time to seal the drain. Monks roll bronze lid, crank locking pins. A lever shifts, stone slab slides, obscuring tunnel junction. Silence returns like exhaled prayer. Hakim leads you up spiral stairs to primary archive, vault lined with pigeonhole cells, each containing codex or scroll labeled in cipher glyphs. He guides crate to central dais, unpacks oranges, laughs at disguise, lifts star cycle manuscript with hands trembling. Monks gather. Collective sigh sounds like wind through reeds. They place scroll in walnut arc, lock with silver key. But you recount, threat. Lamuda not far, city on alert. Hakim's eyes darken. He reveals contingency epsilon. If library breached, final cache of most dangerous texts, Grimoire of Light, Ibn Firnas flight diaries, Gospel of the Laughing Christ, must be evacuated east to Algiers, then Constantinople. He has sandaled couriers, but needs experienced escort. Your gaze drifts to team, weary yet unbroken. Mission scope expands again. Before decisions harden, vibrations jar floorboards, battering at outer scriptorium door. Muffled voice orders entry in Mame of Archbishop. Hakim signals monks into fire drill positions. Hide volumes behind sliding friezes, replace with orthodox soldiers. You shepherd Isolde, Mateo, and injured twin into loft crawl space overlooking nave through arrow-slit vents. Julio and other twin don spare cowls, pose as novitiates. Door splinters inward. Dominican inspectors flood room, torches blazing suspicion. Their captain recites writ authorizing seizure of heretical texts. Hakim bows, feigns compliance, invites inspection. Lamuda glides in, head pivoting like owl. She touches shelves, pauses by arc, heart corkscrews, but moves on, perhaps fooled by decorative lid. Yet she lingers below your vent. You hold breath so long, lungs beg for apocalypse. Mateo's fingers curl into yours. His pulse drums Morse. Trust, trust. Inspectors discover nothing amiss. Captain scowls, declares site provisional clean, but posts 2 guards in case. Lamuda signs something. She will stay overnight. Cat among scrolls. As torches fade, Hakim ascends loft via concealed ladder. His whisper thinner than rice paper. The false walls concealed most, but Lamuda's nose sharp. She may order secondary, more invasive search at dawn. No time to wait for legal reprieve. Evacuation Epsilon begins now. 4 reliquary cases prepared, each looking empty but lined with compartments sized for scrolls. Team must ferry them separately along different routes. One reliquary will carry star cycles, others decoys. Hakim tasks you to escort primary case east through Sierra de las Nieves to a Moorish watchtower where Corsair contact can sail across Alboran Sea. Twins will guide second case north to Toledo's Jewish quarter hidden under Alchemical Workshop. Julio and Isolde third case west to Seville's Romani caravan heading for Lisbon, destined for the secret Azorian press rumored to print on flaxcloth. Mateo, Hakim hesitates, insists Mateo accompany you. Child blends anywhere, plus his notebook is now part of Forbidden Corpus. Plans set. You lower reliquary into rucksack disguised with pilgrim scallop shells. Beneath cloister courtyard, monks open floor hatch revealing rainwater culvert leading under city wall. From there, catacomb labyrinth spits out by the Janil irrigation ditches. Travel light, travel mute. Parting is swift, the only mercy time grants. Hakim squeezes your shoulder, whispers fragment from Book of Ecclesiastes. Of making many books there is no end, of unmaking also. You nod, promise to defy both. Then into hatch you descend, Mateo on heels, reliquary strapped, way ahead swallowing lantern glow. As the slab slides shut, you hear Lamuda's boots pacing far above, searching for breaths you refuse to give her. The culvert smells of damp stone and iron hope. Water ankles cool, currents mutter directions. You wade forward, every step turning page none can censor. When you surface beyond city walls, moon rests atop Sierra Nevada like bookmark in celestial tome. You inhale crisp night. Listen, no hoofbeats yet. Journey east begins. Mist rises from the irrigation ditch and clings to your shins like a second pair of wet stockings, each droplet catching moonlight until your stride looks stitched with silver. Mateo sloshes behind, small breaths fogging in the frosty autumn air, while the reliquary case bumps your spine at every third step, politely reminding you that 15 centuries of dangerous knowledge weigh no more than a bag of pilgrim bread, but command a price measured in executions. Somewhere back in the city, Lamuda is interrogating shadows, tasting the dust you left in the culvert, triangulating futures. Out here, you trade stone tunnels for orchards and constellations, and Granada's torch glow shrinks to a sickle of amber at the horizon. First objective, cross the flooded Vega Plain before sunrise, reach the base of the Alfacar Ridge, and locate the charcoal burner's switchback trail that threads upward like an unhealed scar. According to Hakim's silk map, charcoal piles mark the safe fork. Choose the wrong ash mound, and you'll wander into a wolf den gully the locals call La Boca, where bones vanish faster than prayers. Time is mud, thick and dragging. You set a rhythm, 5 long strides, 1 shallow hop to stay ahead of leech tangles, while coaxing Mateo to recite the Hebrew alphabet in reverse to slow his panic. An hour in, the fields awaken. Pheasants burst from millet rows, dew flies up in glitter, and the sky begins brewing cinnamon-pink light along its eastern rim. With daylight, your makeshift anonymity evaporates. You and Mateo duck beneath a stone bridge, wring water from tunics, and smear ditch mud across the scallop shells stitched to your satchels. Pilgrim markers attract questions this close to the Camino Mozárabe. Mateo offers a contraband smile. You tell him joy is flammable, good for kindling, deadly if seen from a distance. He nods, dousing grin. The charcoal trail appears exactly where Hakim promised. 2 blackened conical mounds, still warm, sending up wisps that smell like ink and almonds. You pivot northeast, climbing into pine slope fragrant with resin. The reliquary's weight redistributes with each lurching step, metal hinges ticking like a reluctant clock. At first ridge crest, you pause to drink from a seep and spot movement on the lower plain. 5 riders wearing white tabards, traveling in zigzag search pattern. No banners, but geometry of their formation screams inquisitorial training. They'll reach the bridge in 25 minutes. You tighten straps, urge Mateo onward. Higher altitude brings Sierra chill, the kind that shaves courage from bones. Path narrows to goat track, clinging to cliff. Loose shale cascades underfoot, rattling into ravines where even echoes break their necks. A hawk wheels overhead, maybe scouting breakfast, maybe relaying your position to that feather-pinned mercenary. Paranoia is a tax you pay on freedom. You hush Mateo, point to a natural overhang ahead where the trail dives beneath limestone lip. Once inside, you unhook the reliquary, unscrew a brass cap, and remove a rolled parchment, the only page you can risk losing. It contains star diagrams annotated by Ptolemy's anonymous Arab commentator, lines that predict comet returns well beyond Christendom's calendar. You hand it to Mateo. "If they catch us," you whisper, "burn this first." He nods solemnly, tucking the parchment under his jerkin beside the notebook of ciphered recipes you pretend is mere juvenilia. Rest is luxury. Pursuit is punctual. You exit the overhang, intending to cut across a scree shortcut Hakim etched in red, when a pebble ricochets above, someone else on the slope. Instinct shoves you flat behind juniper brush, Mateo plastered beside. 2 figures crest the ridge, not Dominican scouts, but mountain smugglers, judging by patchwork cloaks and out-of-season lemons strung from their belts. A silent advertisement they run contraband citrus to Malaga in winter. Opportunity and danger shake hands. You step out, palms raised, greeting them in Andalusi slang about market surplus. The taller smuggler, beard plated with copper wire, raises a dagger but freezes when he sees the scallop shells. Pilgrim passes still purchase goodwill in these hills. You offer 1 onion left from the Corral del Carbón crate and ask directions to Puerto de la Mujer Muerta Pass. In exchange, he warns of a new toll posted by rogue crossbowmen farther east. They demand proof of orthodox intent, confiscating manuscripts as fire tinder. The smugglers avoid them by using an abandoned aqueduct tunnel that pierces the mountain's belly and emerges near the pass, bypassing toll entirely. He'll lead you if you help carry lemon baskets. You agree. Mateo shoulders a net of fruit half his size, and the 4 of you skirt beneath wind-sheared pines to the tunnel mouth,
a Roman arch choked with briars. Inside, darkness hums cool as cellar wine. You advance single file, smugglers up front, your lantern a blur of firefly. Moisture drips from moss-slick walls, forming stalactites that look like petrified quills writing eternity on empty air. Halfway through, the leader halts, gestures silent. Ahead, a leakage of daylight reveals the tollmen's silhouettes blocking the normal trail above the aqueduct outlet. Their crossbows angle unemotionally toward the ravine. Smuggler whispers plan, diversion with lemons. Before you can parse that, he rolls half his stash down a side chute. Citrus clatters like a volley of yellow musket balls onto the rocks below the tollmen. They scramble, shouting accusations of witchcraft, bolts loosed at phantom attackers. While they chase rolling fruit, you and companion slip from tunnel shadow into Cedar Grove beyond.
Not far now to the watchtower, except maps lie the way priests do, only when convenient. The path forks at a dead chestnut tree not marked on Hakim's chart, and the smugglers claim both routes lead around Cerro de la Cornisa, but one hugs an exposed ledge visible for miles. You choose the other, denser in holm oak, trusting cover over speed. But half an hour in, hoofbeats drum from behind. Those 5 riders found your dest. Smugglers vault into ravine. You usher Mateo low beneath a fallen pine, shove reliquary under its trunk, fronds dulling brass shine. Then sound stops. Riders dismount. Voices drift. They examine splash of lemon juice on rock, wonder aloud why fruit would be this high. A female voice, calm, compass sharp. You know it before turning, La Muda. She scans slope, her silence a lance-piercing shrub lines. One rider recommends torching brush to flush fugitives. She taps his helmet once. He stiffens, slinks to horse.
Fire is language mountains understand too well. They'll burn half the ridge rather than search it step by step. You weigh options. Surrender reliquary to save Mateo? Never. Sprint? Suicide. Smugglers? Already ghosts. Only tool left. Reputation. You draw a sling bullet the twins gifted, a lead sphere carved with Greek letter phi and tiny holes that whistle in flight. You load sling with bullet and a pine cone soaked in lamp oil, ignite cone, sling upward over rider's position. Flaming projectile parks, screaming unnatural pitch. It lands beyond them, igniting dry broom. Another sling, different angle. Residents of Sierra know a brush fire spreads faster downhill. To them, flames above signal run. Riders panic, mount horses. La Muda alone remains, studying trajectory, but she too retreats as smoke thickens. You wait until hoofbeats fade downhill, then stamp out any stray sparks near Mateo. Not heroics, pragmatism. Wildfire would roast manuscripts same as men. Once safe, you retrieve reliquary. Thank smugglers for guidance. They emerge smelling of damp but alive, and press on. Dusk blues the sky when Watchtower finally crowns the spur, silhouette like a chess rook carved from moonlight. Abandoned by armies a century ago, it now houses one Moorish caretaker, Abu Ishaq, a philosopher mason who codes messages into mosaic patterns. You purchased his allegiance months back with a commentary on Avicenna written in marginalia. He owes you safe harbor. You knock thrice, then twice, rhythm of Al-Ghazali's heartbeat. Stone door cracks. Abu Ishaq peers, lantern revealing ink-stained beard. He ushers you, Mateo, and smugglers inside. Tower interior smells of saltpeter and old ideas. Tapers illuminate stairs, spiraling down rather than up. Secret harbor carved into cliff base, where a narrow grotto opens to the Alberon Sea.
Tonight, a corsair skiff waits beyond tidal rocks, its captain eager to trade swift passage for any mathematical chart predicting Atlantic storms. You have Ptolemy's star cycles. They predict more than comets. Line extrapolation hints at planetary conjunctions steering trade winds. The captain will bargain with gratitude. But first, rest and reorganize. Abu Ishaq serves lentil stew, outlines situation. Spanish patrol boats scour coast after seizure of forbidden calendars in Malaga. Skiff must depart before dawn slack water, hugging shoals the galleys avoid. That leaves 4 hours to descend, load crates, and slip past the reef gate. Smugglers volunteer to ferry lemons home. In return, they gift you a donkey skin pouch of dried myrtle leaves. Burn one, it masks human scent. Useful if La Muda employs hounds. You unseal reliquary, confirm scrolls dry. Mateo curls on carpet, eyes watching shadows dance across vaulted stones. You share plan. Cross to the small emirate of Saleh, then eastward by caravan across the Tel Atlas to Tunis. Secure berth on Maltese trader to Constantinople. Months of risk, but library's heart will beat on. Quiet conversation breaks when Abu Ishaq's pigeon dart down staircase. Bronze whistle arrow shot through mail slot. Paper wrapped around shaft. His alarm system. Message. Riders spotted on ridge. One female with glove signals. La Muda stands at gore you entered 2 hours ago. No flame diversions this time. The tower's timber beams would turn tomb. Abu Ishaq reveals second egress. Vertical chute used to quarry stone, sealed at top by capstone disguised as cairn. It drops 20 cubits into natural cavern linking to grotto. Accessible only via rope ladder currently coiled at shaft mouth. Perfect escape, if you can reach it without opening main gore. You rig diversion. Abu Ishaq rearranges mosaic tiles by candlelight, forming deliberate Nazar inscription, "There is no victor but God." When La Muda forces entry, she'll interpret it as final plea, assume occupants fled seaward. Meanwhile, you, Mateo, and Reliquary will descend chute. Smugglers slink along previous aqueduct path. Abu seals tower behind him, collapsing internal stairs with mallet strike. He'll join later through culvert into grotto. Execution. You and Mateo creep to shaft, coil rope around beam, lower into darkness that smells of iron and salt. Mateo clutches parchment and notebook to chest, muttering aleph backwards. Mid-descent, rope jerks, someone above lifting slack faster than you descend. Either Abu or enemy? You drop last 4 cubits, land on shale, wave Mateo aside. Moments later, rope whizzes downward sans weight. Cut. Above, faint clang of metal. Abu? Unlikely. La Muda found chute capstone? You squint upward. Only moon shard through gap. No figure, but rope. Sever line clean. Saber, not saw. She knows path. Cavern stretches toward sea as jagged hallway. You sprint, boots splashing brine pools, reliquary clanging. Tunnel mouth opens to starlit cove where skiff rocks impatient. Corsair captain, Ziad Almandri, leans on tiller, parrot perched on shoulder like mismatched parentheses. He greets with raised brow. Schedule suddenly abrupt? You shove reliquary into hold, explain pursuers minus vowels. Ziad spits, orders crew to push off. As keel clears shingle, arrow hits water near bow. Shoreline silhouettes, La Muda plus 2 crossbowmen descending goat path. She raises hand, second volley arcs. Crew rows furiously, you shield Mateo with body. Arrows fall short as tide pulls vessel beyond range. Lamuda watches wordlessly, small figure shrinking against moonlit cliff, but victory tastes like ash. She still holds tower, maybe Abu Ishaq. Yet library beats on water now, heading south.
Sea at night is a blank manuscript. Waves write and erase words too fast to read. Ziad sets lateen sail. Wind snaps canvas. Skiff cuts across phosphorescent foam toward dim lights of Melilla Cape. You slump against hull, exhaustion filing bones to dust. Mateo unfurls parchment, reveals it singed at edge from earlier flare. Knowledge bearing scar like you. Captain offers stale dates, begins barter. You grant him meteorologic tables excerpt. In exchange, he'll divert half-day east to avoid royal patrols, deliver you to secluded cove near Tetuan with contact caravan already paid by Hakim's gold. Deal sealed by snow-white goathide, inscribed with Ibn Firnas glider sketch that Ziad swears to hang in cabin as good omen. Hours later, horizon blisters pink. You doze but dream restless. Lamuda at prow of ghost galley, cutting waves faster than wind, her silence punching holes in sails. Wake before dawn, sea calm, crew prepping breakfast of sardines grilled on deck brazier. Mateo leans rail, counts gulls, whispers he misses twin sling songs. You promise reunion in Constantinople, story's final chapter still unwritten. Yet southward safety falters early. As sun climbs, lookout shouts warning. Twin lateen cutter bearing Castilian colors intercept course from west. Likely coastal patrol alerted by tower beacon you fail to douse. Ziad curses, orders reef sails, but cutter faster. Options: flee into shoals where patrols draft too deep. Risk hull on submerged reef. Jettison cargo as decoy. You volunteer Plan Gamma. Use reliquary content. You extract innocuous scroll, a botanical treatise on vine thrips. Tie rope through wooden dowels, affix seashell weight. Crew toss scroll overboard. Patrol sees splash, assumes smuggler jettison. Cutter alters course, slows to retrieve. Skiff veers opposite direction into spray, wind filling sail like promise. By noon, you round Cape Tres Forcas. Patrol, hull speck far astern. Ziad relaxes, sets heading for Tetuan Inlet. Coastline crumples into cork tree ridges, scent of myrtle slinking seaward. You note to use leaves later to shroud reliquary odor. Late afternoon, skiff noses into narrow estuary hidden by mangroves. Caravan tents dot sandbar, blue stripes of Beni Hassan tribe. Their leader, Aisha al-Jadida, greets you with handshake that cracks knuckles. She once studied optics in Fez before exile, now trades glass beads for salt and secrets. She'll guide you across desert edge to Qasar el-Kabir, exchange at Portuguese fort for Italian merchant convoy east. Price: copy of Ptolemy commentary. You agree to summarize star section from memory while traveling. Mateo will illustrate diagrams. Night falls beneath canvas tent stitched from repurposed sails. You check reliquary, ensure star scroll safe, tighten latch. Outside, drums start. Tribe celebrates safe arrival of goods. Music threads through desert chill. You feel tension unwind like scroll. Mateo dozes beside brazier, cheeks glowing ember red. You allow yourself a sip of mint tea, glance at sky. Orion rising, belt pointing to east, direction calling. But silhouette interrupts stargaze. Small falcon perched on dune, black ribbon tied to leg. It watches camp, head tilting in mechanical increments, trained bird.
On its anklet, glint of obsidian bead, Lamuda's emblem. Your stomach knots. She has allies in rift tribes, or hired their rivals. Falcon screeches, launches into night heading southeast, the very route you'll take at dawn. Message delivered. Threat renewed. You enter tent, ink quill, draft contingency, Zeta for caravan, false route maps, decoy reliquary, night march schedule. You douse lamp before plan finishes. Secrecy now must include paper itself. Outside, drums fade into wind, like pages turning in a book too ancient to bind. Tomorrow you will trade hoofbeats for sandstorms, manuscripts for mirages. But tonight, between distant wolf howls and lute strings, you cradle reliquary close, pulse sinking with fragile hearts inside. Knowledge, like fire, is safest when carried, never caged. Dawn sneaks across the Riffian foothills on cat paws of lavender light, and by the time the first ray nicks the estuary, the camp is already collapsing into motion. Sand-colored canvas vanishing into saddle bundles, cooking fires quenched beneath handfuls of damp reeds, every hoofprint brushed away with a palm frond in case trackers read the ground like scripture. You tighten the camel's girth while Mateo fits the reliquary into a wicker pannier padded with goat hair felt and crowned with perfectly innocent dates. One shake of the basket and a scholar's lifetime of heresy clicks in protest under fruit flesh. Aisha checks each load, sparing you a grin that's half encouragement, half eulogy for anyone foolish enough to follow. The caravan moves in silence at first. 30 camels, 3 mules, 2 wiry greyhounds trotting scout duty along the dunes. Wind drags tiny banners of sand off every crest, erasing tracks almost before they're made. But you keep glancing back anyway, half expecting Lamuda's falcon to slice the sky, drop a feather like a death warrant. Nothing yet. Only the sun climbing through a pale veil, committing daylight gently, as if reluctant to expose your ruse too quickly. By mid-morning, you reach the Cebu floodplain, where papyrus rafts of green sway in the river breeze. The trail dips into a tamarisk grove, its trunks warped from centuries of desert siege. Aisha calls a halt beneath the largest, its bark carved with Tuareg star maps. Water skins pass hand to hand. A goatskin bag of camel milk yogurt is shared, tart enough to make Mateo's eyes water. He's begun limning the Ptolemaic diagrams in charcoal on a spare parchment, practicing reversed letters so any quick inspection reads like gibberish. Remember, you remind him, knowledge is a chameleon. Change its colors whenever a predator arrives. He nods, mouth full of yogurt, and sketches a comet tail hooking around a date palm, just for spite. The Sirocco rises after noon, hurling grit that sings against brass buckles. Conversation dwindles to gestures and eyebrow code. You ride third camel from the front for best sightline, scanning for movement on ridgelines. When the greyhounds freeze, ears pricked, the caravan folds in like a cordatina. Merchants crouch behind saddles, archers knock blunt-head arrows designed to discourage without killing. 2 figures crest the nearest dune, a father and son shepherd team leading scrawny sheep. False alarm, maybe. Aisha hands them a lemon apiece, contraband generosity, and they shuffle on, trailing bleats and dust. Still, your pulse keeps counting seconds between wind gusts. Predators let innocence pass to lull, then strike. Sunset bruises the horizon purple and gold. You make dry camp in a shallow wadi hidden by scrub acacias. Cook fires are forbidden tonight. Instead, dates and salted sardines satisfy hunger. Mateo dozes inside a ring of saddlebags, while you, Aisha, and the oldest guard, Yusef, sit watch. The guard passes a goatskin flask of fig arak. You sip, feel nerves loosen, then study the star-stained vault overhead. There, Cassiopeia's chair tilting, pointing to Polaris. East of that, a moving spark, no star. Metal catching starlight. A lantern shutter from riders on distant dune? Yusef sees it too. He mimes counting horses. 3, maybe 4. You think of Lamuta's 5. Subtraction means casualties or a decoy team. Either way, dawn departure must be accelerated. An hour before sunrise, the caravan is moving again, slipping from wadi like ghosts wearing camel skins. Aisha diverts southeast toward the limestone gorge, known locally as Throat of the Jinn. Dangerous ground, but threaded with cast caves, perfect for ambush or hiding, depending on who arrives first. You pass the ruins of a Roman milestone, pitted by wind. Miles ALV. Somewhere beyond, Portuguese muskets guard the fortress at Ksar el-Kabir, your next barter checkpoint. But between here and there lie the jinn's twisting lungs. Light thickens as you enter the gorge. Walls rise sheer, painted with swallows' nests like punctuation. Sound changes too. Hooves echo twice, then die, swallowed by bends. You dismount, lead the camel caravan single file along the salt-crusted bed, hands brushing stone often warm to the touch despite shade, as if the earth keeps its own clandestine fire. Halfway through, Mateo tugs their sleeve. He points to a symbol etched above an overhang, a stylized eye with forked tear. Hakim sign for bad exit, enemy ahead. You wave to Aisha, who responds with silent split-path command. Caravan will feign heading east while you, Mateo, and Yusuf take reliquary through a fissure passage marked only on Hakim's silk. It climbs steep and narrow, emerges onto a tabletop plateau laced with tufts of alpha grass. There, a cluster of Cyclopean dolmens waits, prehistoric and half-collapsed, perfect for staging illusions. You lash the camel's foreknees so it can't wander, shift the basket behind a stone slab, and scatter empty scroll tubes across the plateau. Bait. Then you and Mateo descend the opposite side on foot, sliding through scree to a hidden sheep track. Yusuf remains to play decoy shepherd. He wraps a ragged turban around face, lights a resin stick. The aromatic smoke drifts skyward, beacon bright to anyone scanning. Not 10 minutes later, you hear shouts above, clatter of hooves. You risk a glance. 5 riders circle the dolmens. White tabards smap, Lamuta's company. She dismounts, strides to Yusuf, pulls back his turban. Even at distance, you feel the silence that follows, her trademark question unsaid. Yusuf gestures broadly, offers a nonsense grin. She pistol whips him. Mateo gasps, you clamp his mouth. Lamuta overturns the basket, dates cascade. She splits one, finds no manuscript, eyes sweep terrain. Her head tilts hawk-like. Time to disappear. You push Mateo downslope toward a creek bed dotted with oleander. There, a Berber one-man skiff rests upside down on pebbles, left by goat herders to ferry salt across seasonal ponds. You flip it, discover patched leaks, but still buoyant. Creek trickles eastward, bending toward the Lucos River, which snakes straight to Atlantic marsh below Ksar el-Kabir. It's a gamble, but water leaves fewer prints in sand. You seal reliquary inside camel-skin bladder, strap it beneath plank bench, then shove off. The current is gentle, just enough to carry you through reed tunnels glittering with dragonflies. For 2 hours you drift, Poles silent, hearts louder. Sun climbs overhead, hammered copper pressing heat against skull. Matteo sketches river meanders in margins of his notebook, proof of journey should history question. You ration water. At last, reeds thin, current quickens, and the skiff debouches into wider river. On far bank rises the Portuguese fort, white battlements, Red Cross flag limp in still air. Cannons guard mouth, but rarely fire. This border lives on tariffs, not war. You beach the skiff behind mangroves, signal with mirror shard. A minute passes, then two. Finally, a lantern wiggles atop battlement. 3 short flashes, safe to approach. You shepherd Matteo across mud-flat planks, pass beneath archway smelling of tar and oranges. Captain Lorenzo de Souza greets you with diplomatic largesse. He owes Aisha 2 favors. One for the time she smuggled his cousin out of Lisbon in a wine barrel. Second for the astronomical almanac predicting last year's eclipse. He ushers you into a stone chamber where Portuguese, Arabic, and Greek manuscripts mingle like contraband party guests. With parchment and inkwell, you trade. Lorenzo receives a copied section on lunar nodes. You gain passage on a Venetian cog bound for Chania, Crete, thence onward to Constantinople. Departure at dusk. You gulp relief deeper than river water. While sailors load barrels of saltfish, you and Matteo explore Battlement Walkway. The Atlantic sprawls west, flat as a sheet waiting for marginalia. Matteo asks if the ocean is more dangerous than La Muda. You answer that danger is only geography wearing intent. The ocean seldom intends. Easier odds. He laughs, a sound brittle but awakening. Dusk. The cog Labyrinthus unfurls square sails, catching a steady northerly. Lorenzo salutes. You answer with raised vellum packet. River mouth widens to sea. Fort lantern shrinks. The ship's captain, Signor Vitelli, invites you to supper with the supercargo, rabbit stew seasoned with saffron. You decline wine. You need clear night vision. First week at sea passes in relative calm. Nights, you stargaze with astrolabe. Days, you help Matteo practice Greek script to disguise Arabic annotations. Crew gamble on dice. You bet nothing but advice on approaching low-pressure systems. They almost believe you summoned dolphins 2 evenings prior when your whistle mirrored their clicks. Second week, a mistral roars, driving crest waves that rear like chargers. Labyrinthus carves troughs but holds course. You secure reliquary in captain's iron safe, though iron is less reliable than loyalty. Still, risk is distributed like ballast. Storm passes, leaving sails tattered but spirits high, until Crow's Nest spots a lateen sail on port quarter, pursuing. No flag. Hull slender, fast. Barbary corsair, or worse, a privateer flagged beneath false colors. Captain orders more canvas, but damage from Mistral slows you. Battle seems imminent. You volunteer an alternate defense, knowledge as munitions. Captain scoffs, but options dwindle. You fetch the reliquary, extract a heavy codex with copper clasps, an Arabic translation of Galen's treatise on poisons. Into a tarred sack, you add worthless ballast stones, overlay codex, lash with rope, smear with fish oil so it glistens gold in twilight. As pursuer nears, you and Matteo haul sack to rail and, with theatrical panic, hurl overboard. Sea swallows bait. Privateer alters course, slowing to salvage what they assume is treasure jettisoned by frightened merchants. Labyrinthus limps eastward, escaping into moonlight. Captain Vitelli baptizes you, patron saint of tactical bibliophiles. Crete's outline smudges dawn 10 days later, jagged, snow-tipped Ida looming. At Chania, You disembark only long enough to swap vessels. A Byzantine-flagged merchant, the Hagion Nephos, prepares to sail for Constantinople laden with olive oil amphorae. Her master, Kyrillos, is a monk in exile from Mount Athos for translating Origen without redactions. He respects forbidden ink. You pay fare with Galen's commentary on humors, copied overnight from memory while Matteo inked diagrams. Your brain bleeds knowledge faster than parchment absorbs.
2 more weeks across Aegean blue silk. Islands drift past like punctuation marks. Paros, Naxos, Lesbos, each luminous at dawn, whispering possibilities of safe haven. But destiny threads one city. Constantinople, queen of cities, where domes catch sun like golden furibles. When Hagion Nephos glides through Bosporus Strait, you stand at prow, heart hammering cathedral bells before actual bells toll. Hagia Sophia's silhouette rises, grand, implacable, built to harbor echoes older than conquest.
Dockside chaos is operatic. Vendors hawking figs, janissaries drilling, pilgrims arguing doctrine. You slip through static with reliquary disguised beneath coarse wool, Matteo hand in yours. Kyrillos leads you through Spice Bazaar labyrinth into the Fenar quarter, to a crumbling monastery, Studios, once scriptorium of empire, now semi-abandoned, perfect for ghosts with books.
Prior Gregorios greets Kyrillos like prodigal quill. He recognizes scallop shell on your satchel, smiles, "We preserve roads as well as words." He guides you down staircases smelling of beeswax and stone, through a narthex where mosaics shed tesserae like tears. Hidden door behind a fresco of Jonah opens, false wall hinged on iron pins. Inside, a narrow chamber, bibliothecae cryptae, lined with cedar shelves, each packed with manuscripts deemed dangerous. Nestorian commentaries, Al-Khwarizmi's algebra, early heliocentric speculations. At eye level, an empty slot waits. Gregorios gestures. You place reliquary gently, lids opening to reveal star scrolls, commentary, and Matteo's notebook, now vellum-bound with blank section labeled Future. Silence holds, thick as incense. Gregorios traces the copper hinges, murmurs prayer not from any liturgy, but from memory of loss. May the ink endure the ignorance of kings. He closes cabinet. Fresco swings shut. Dust motes settle. History exhales. Upstairs, evening vespers begin. You sit in cloister, sipping water infused with rose hips. Matteo practices Greek with a novice, laughter echoing. For first time in months, your shoulders unclench. The chase feels like a legend belonging to someone else. Yet you know shadows travel faster than ships. La Muda may already prowl Golden Horn, silent among spice sacks. Night deepens. You climb monastery roof for air. City lanterns shimmer across water. A cat coils round your ankles. You scratch its ears, ask whether Silence herself ever sleeps. Cat blinks, tail flicks. On distant quay, a lone figure stands. Female silhouette, gloves glinting. She lifts hand, almost a salute, then melts into alley. No pursuit tonight. Maybe truce, maybe prelude. Back in scriptorium, Gregorios presents you with a slim codex, copy of Hypatia's lost treatise on conic sections, pieced together from palimpsests these walls hid for centuries. Gift for the courier who brought stars back to roost. You accept with reverence, understanding burden never truly settles, it simply changes carriers. At dawn, Bells stretch golden threads across courtyards. Matteo and you prepare to depart. North through Balkans, rumor says Polish scholars hunger for Arabic optics. Gregorios asks if you'll stay as curator. You smile. Road still owns you. Knowledge must keep moving, or it rusts into dogma. He nods, understanding nomads of ink. You exit monastery. Step into sun. A breeze off Marmara flips your cloak. Inside pocket, a single feather. Dark, small. Falcons. Tucked beside, a folded scrap of parchment. Ink that roams is harder to burn. Keep walking. M. Lamuda's initial may be mockery, maybe blessing. You laugh, a sound clean, unburdened. Street crowds part. Future unfurls like scroll without end. You walk, Matteo matching stride, both of you bearing nothing and everything. Books hide behind walls. Truth rides in footsteps. And somewhere, in a hidden cedar chamber, star diagrams dream of comets set free by a voyage that refused to be silenced. Knowledge survives not by fighting fire, but by learning to glow in the dark, guiding travelers who dare follow faint, forbidden light. Dim the lights, friend, close your eyes, and let those hidden pages rustle like leaves in a wind from centuries ago. If sleep finds you before the last candle gutters, remember, somewhere a monk is sliding a fresco shut, a writer is cresting a dune, and a story is waiting to be smuggled into dawn. Rest easy. History's best secrets are safe for now.